Hello, Jacksonites! As promised. Sorry, it's currently a heat wave, so I may be obnoxiously sweaty and shiny throughout this video. Welcome back after 3 years of this series being dormant. Sorry, I got distracted for a couple years. Welcome back to Super Ultra Binge. Although funny, it's the third episode after 3 years. But yeah, indeed. Welcome back to Super Ultra Binge. And as promised, today I will be returning to the Ultraman franchise proper and giving a review, a very honest review, of one of my least favorite installments of the entire Ultraman franchise, with 2013's Ultraman Ginga, specifically this show right here, up at the top. Oh boy, Ultraman Ginga. Although it does look really nice at this snazzy Blu-ray set, of course, put out by Mill Creek in, I believe, 2020. Let me look that up real quick. Yeah, I was right. September 15th, 2020 was when the Ultraman Ginga set was released. Close to 5 years. Texas Guy Movie Reviews is back. So hello. Alrighty, so jumping right into this, I want to try to keep this as on topic and streamlined as possible because I do have a fair bit of stuff to say about this show. Um, oh, damn it. Off to a great start. Why is this not cooperating? Oh, I think my thingamajig is loose. Wow, what a great fucking start. There we go. Okay, here we go. Sorry. Got my cons and pros up here. Which, by the way, today I actually will be beginning. I think I'll flip and flop on stuff that I review from now on. If it's mostly negative, I'm going to begin with my cons. And if it's mostly positive, I'll begin with my pros. Um, but definitely with this show, it's warranted me starting with cons. You'll see as we continue. Okay, so Ultraman Ginga is a Japanese television series produced by Super Productions. It is the 17th entry, 26th overall in the Ultra series, released to celebrate the company's 50th anniversary. Super Productions was, of course, founded by Ichi Tsuburaya in 1963. It is the first entry in the current phase of the Ultraman franchise known as the New Generation series or New Generation era. ending a 6-year-long hiatus of live-action shows produced in Japan after Ultraman Mebius had concluded back in 2007. It aired as part of the new Ultraman Retsuden, a clip show compilation series, programming block on TV Tokyo from July 10th. Funny, it aired on Ultraman Day 2013 to December 18th, 2013. A second season titled Ultraman Ginga S aired in 2014. Today, though, we are just going to focus on the first season, Ultraman Ginga. You could review Ginga and Ginga S in one video, but I'm choosing not to because it's very easy to group both shows together, but I do separate Ginga and Ginga S, partially because there is a big increase in quality between the two shows. Plus, in the context of the show, they take place 2 years apart. So yeah, I'm separating Ginga and Ginga S from each other. We're just going to focus on this series. So I'm actually going to take these off now. Ultraman Ginga is an interesting series. So, jumping into my personal history, sadly, I have no burp fuel. I just have a grape Powerade Zero here. So, 2013 was around, I believe, the peak of my Ultraman phase. When I was just absolutely obsessed with the franchise, living and breathing anything Ultraman. So I followed the production of not really production, but a lot of the hype and release surrounding the Ultraman film Ultraman Saga had come and gone. So I was and also Ultra Zero Fight Season 2 had concluded. So news dropping of a brand new Ultraman show being released by Super Ultra Productions dropped on various YouTube channels that I would watch at the time. And I would also see promotional material for Ultraman Ginga be released. Super Ultra Productions does this a lot, where they use magazines a lot to like promote a new show. And as a frequent visitor of Ultraman Wiki, that was the main place where I found out that Ultraman Ginga was on its way. No. So, yeah, I would see the promotional art, I would see some of the hype, and I would eventually see teasers and trailers for Ultraman Ginga being dropped. And something about this series was not really sitting well with me. So, I've been subscribed to the official Ultraman YouTube channel since 2012. And on that channel, I believe, they dropped the first episode of Ultraman Ginga, July 10th, 2013. And I do remember sitting down and watching it and being extremely unimpressed and underwhelmed. There was something about this show that just was throwing up all the red flags, and just something didn't feel right, something didn't look right, something just did not seem right with this show. So I kind of shunned it for a little while. I would watch a few clips of the show on YouTube here and there, and I'd watch a couple fight scenes from the show here and there on YouTube. But I never fully watched the show until this Mill Creek set was released in September of 2020. So I got my hands on, of course, like any time an Ultraman Blu-ray is dropped for pre-order, I'm on that shit as quick as I possibly can. So I pre-ordered this, but I didn't watch it immediately when it first arrived. I watched it, I believe, in early 2022 for the first time, I was going through a phase where I wanted to chew through a bunch of shows that I'd had, but I wanted to start with the short ones. And spoilers, Ultraman Ginga is a 12 episode series. So I was like, okay, I'm digging Ultraman right now. So let me chew through some of the shorter shows first. So yeah, early 2022, funny, nearly 10 years after the show debuted, was when I watched the entirety of the series for the first time. And I really was not impressed. All those feelings that I had back in 2013 kind of came flooding back to me. And upon finishing the show, I finally understood and realized why I felt that way. This is not that great of a show. It's kind of a shame that, or not really a shame, but it's kind of funny. I really wanted to make a big deal out of coming back to Super Ultra Binge, but I begin my new tenure with one of my least favorite installments. Um, but admittedly, one big reason why I wanted to do this is because A, it's the beginning of the new generation era. All of the new generation era shows are very short. None of them exceed 25 episodes, unfortunately. But I also figure because this is a short series, I can just power through it and get a review done and over with as quick as I can, which I will hopefully do. So yeah, with all that out of the way, the fan reaction to Ultraman Ginga kind of seems to be more or less the same as my opinion. I don't know. I haven't seen anybody say it's one of, well, no. Zagorudin also says that it's not a good show, which is one of very few times I like wholeheartedly agree with his opinion on an Ultraman show. But a lot of people in the Ultraman fan base have not held Ginga in high regard. Um, to which case, again, I do agree. I do list Ultraman Ginga as one of my top 10 or maybe even top 5 least favorite installments of the entire Ultraman franchise. It is just not great, unfortunately. So, jumping right into plot time. So I'm not going to read every single plot for every single episode, but unfortunately, the only way that I can really talk about the plot for any Ultraman show is if I read the plots of each episode. So, well, not each, but a fair few episodes. But of course, beginning with the first episode, Town of Falling Stars. The show begins with a young man, it taking place in a separate continuity, or a new universe, which is nothing new for the Ultraman franchise. I think this is like the 10th new universe introduced in the Ultraman series. A young man named Hikaru Raido, when he is unsuspectingly meets one of his old friends, Misuzu Isurugi, while saving her from a runaway cart. Misuzu takes Hikaru to a private school when in actuality it is the Ginga Shrine which holds the Ginga Spark. He, Hikaru also meets up with other childhood friends Kenta Watarai and Chigusa Kuno. Later that evening, Hikaru goes to the shrine and finds the Ginga Spark. Upon grabbing it, it shines a large light, which shows Hikaru a battle between the Ultramen from different universes and Kaiju from different universes called the Dark Spark War. He sees a glimpse of a dark giant, which is known as Dark Lugiel, and his brief encounter with Ultraman Ginga. Hikaru also realizes that the Land of Light is real, and he meets Ultraman Taro in the form of a 5-inch Bandai figure known as a Spark Doll. The next day, Dark Lugiel sends alien Valky to find people to use the Dark Dummy Sparks. Dummy being the operative word. As Taro is teaching Hikaru to use the Ginga Spark, Thunder Durambia appears, a monster from Ultraman Dyna. Already in the form of Black King, using the Ginga Spark, Hikaru tries to fight back but is badly beaten. But when protecting Misuzu, Ginga's Spark Doll appears and Hikaru transforms into Ultraman Ginga and finishes off Thunder Durambia. Episode 2, A Midsummer Night's Dream. While alien Valky is dancing and teasing the Spark Dolls, Dark Bluegill approaches him and gives Valky a new mission. Meanwhile, illegal dumpers had been sentenced into exorcism ritual by Hikaru's grandpa, Hotsuma, whom believes that they have been possessed by an evil spirit. As the ritual ends, it shocks all of them. Later, while everybody plays football, a maniac biker disturbs them and chases Misuzu. Hikaru saves her while Taro uses his ultra psychokinesis to hold off the biker for Officer Kaki, I hate that name, to catch him, but the biker escapes. At night, Hikaru thanks Taro for rescuing them earlier, as Taro revealed that such information about Ginga are non-existent in the Land of Light archives. Taro later reveals all the information of Ultraman to Hikaru. Again. Alien Valky approaches the mad biker and gives him a dark dummy spark and a spark doll. Upon seeking out his victim, the biker transforms into Keemer from Ultra Q and chases the terrified girl throughout the empty school building. Eventually losing him, Misuzu then bumps into a cop on patrol. However, Keemer reappears behind the unsuspecting policeman and coats him with his teleporting goo. As Keemer closes in on Misuzu, he is ambushed by Hikaru with a soccer ball to the head. Frustrated, the alien engages Hikaru in a one-sided brawl, with Ginga's host getting brutalized by Keemer. Upon seeing how Hikaru was in trouble, Misuzu musters all her courage and assaults Keemer with a mop in a very stupid, cringy way. Annoyed and angered by this, Keemer finally grew to his giant form. With Ultraman Taro's timely arrival, Hikaru quickly transforms into Thunder Durambia to engage Keemer. However, he's no match for Keemer's superior agility, as his electrical attacks fail to connect. However, after this, Hikaru decides to transform into Ultraman Ginga and finishes off the alien by throwing him into the air and destroying him. Oh, okay, never mind. Plot for episode 3 is pretty short. The two-headed flame beast. The Furuhoshi Primary School still means a lot to Hikaru and his pals, who cherish their childhood memories. But now the school is being attacked with flames by the evil two-headed monster King Pandon. Ultraman Ginga engages the monster and saves the day in a very anticlimactic and generic way. Hold on, I'm trying to find the next episode. Let's see. Episode 5, The Dream Destroyers. Um, Continuing from the previous episode where Ultraman Ginga was defeated by the returning robot Gene Killer, Tomoya, one of the pilot of Gene Killer, starts scheming with the needed Ultraman Taro's help. This is not very well written. Back at the school, Hikaru and Misuzu reveal everything to Chigusa as they decided not to reveal it to Kenta, but as Kenta just arrived, he bitterly went off with alien Valky, seeing him as a target. Hikaru goes out and witnesses Gene Killer in front of him. He hears Taro and uses Keemer to infiltrate the robot and rescue him, only to discover that Kenta is with the Dark Dummy Spark and assumes Kenta is the robot's controller before they exit. However, Tomoya still is in possession of Ultraman Taro. The real Gene Killer appears as Hikaru uses Kenta's Spark Doll Doragori to fight, followed by Ultraman Ginga. When both of them are falling from space during their fight, Ginga reverts to his Spark Doll form due to the time limit, leaving Hikaru falling until he was saved by Gene Killer himself. Shocked by this, Dark Lugiel sends Tiga Dark to destroy both Hikaru and Tomoya, revealing Tomoya's secret to Hikaru. Tiga Dark is about to destroy uh, the two, but Ultraman Taro saves them in time. Episode 6, The Dream Battle. Let's see. All of Hikaru's friends are in disbelief that Tomoya was the pilot of Gene Killer. He revealed that he told his father that he would follow in his footsteps as an adult, only to be scolded, resulting in him living under the man's shadow. Taro approaches Tomoya and reveals to him that on the Land of Light, he also had a similar experience as a child, but was later comforted by his mother, who suggests that he could surpass his father. Hikaru, feeling sorry for Tomoya, decides to give him a dream to defeat Ultraman Ginga. Tomoya agrees and summons Gene Killer while Hikaru transforms into Ultraman Ginga. The two fight as Misuzu, Kenta, Chigusa, and Taro watch. Ginga defeats Gene Killer with relative ease by phasing his hand into the cockpit and crushes the Dark Dummy Spark Tomoya had with his hands, expelling Tomoya out of his body. But then, as Ginga's color timer starts to blink, showing he is low on power, Tiga Dark appears and fights Ginga again. Alien Valky also joins the fight and uses Ultraman Taro as a hostage. And the duo begin to overpower the weakened Ultraman Ginga. But Tomoya, seeing his dream would be crushed and starts to shed tears, he causes Gene Killer to become Gene 9. After Tomoya went back into his body, Gene 9 assists Ginga in fighting off the two villains, thus ending the episode. Technically, next was the Ultraman Ginga Theater Special, which I think that was a clip show. Or maybe the Closed World is a clip show. Yeah, the Closed World is the clip show. So episode Oh, here we go. Episode 8, The Stolen Ginga Spark. It turns out that Hikaru and his friends are not the only ones that are swallowed up into the distorted space-time. During the events of the clip show episode, it's revealed that Hikaru and his friends are trapped inside a pocket dimension slash ceiling barrier that surrounds the surrounding area of the school that they're at. which is a in-universe explanation as to why this show uses the same scenery over and over again, as we'll discuss later. Misuzu's father and his work pals are also forced to spend the night at Furuhoshi Primary School. When morning dawns, monsters howling echoes in the sky. Hikaru reaches out for his Ginga Spark, but cannot find it anywhere. Episode 9, The Jet Black Ultra Brothers. Hikaru has Ginga fights against Ultraman Dark, but Ginga is no match. Hikaru tries to see who the host of Ultraman Dark is and sees a familiar face, realizing that it is Seiichiro Isurugi, Misuzu's father. Despite his best efforts, Ginga is soon defeated by the wide shot of 7 Dark, and it turns out that Seiichiro has both Ultraman and 7 Spark Dolls, allowing him to switch to the two whenever he wants. Ginga reverts to Hikaru, and as Ultra 7 Dark is about to use his Eye Slugger on the unconscious boy, Misuzu arrives and shouts for him to stop, causing 7 Dark to hesitate and dissipate. As Hikaru is resting, Tomomi Kuroki meets alien Knuckle from the Return of Ultraman, who gives her a dark dummy spark, after which she is dark-lived into Antlar from the original Ultraman. Misuzu, Kenta, and Chigusa meet Hotsuma Raido, who gave them the Jasuline Spark Doll. Misuzu ultra-lives into the monster from Ultraman Mebius, and along with Kenta and Chigusa, but they are no match for Antlar as it requires all 3 of them to work in unison, which they cannot do. Elsewhere, Tomoya and Officer Kaki, I hate that name, engage alien Knuckle but are no match for him, as Knuckle disables the use of Tomoya's gun pad by forcing it to stick to a wall out of his reach. Taro uses his Ultra Psychokinesis to allow Tomoya to retrieve his gun pad, as Hikaru finally regains consciousness and Ultra lives into Ultraman Ginga. As Ginga arrives, he saves Jasuline from Antlar, and Ginga faces the monster. But as Ginga is about to finish it off, Antlar is shot at by the wide shot from 7 Dark and destroyed. Ginga faces Ultra 7 Dark for the second time. Ginga and the Dark Ultra use their finishing beams but are equally matched. But then 7 Dark transforms into Ultraman Dark and proceeds to kick the crap out of Ginga. Interrupted by Gene 9, Ultraman Dark then takes down Gene 9 as he converts into his robot form. But then Ultraman Dark transforms into Ultra 7 Dark and tries to use Ginga as a shield against Gene 9, causing Tomoya to hesitate. Then 7 Dark takes down Gene 9 with his Dark Emirium Ray. Seeing Ultra 7 Dark's brutality, Ginga decides to get back into the fight and defeats 7 Dark with the Ginga Cross Shoot. And the final episode... Hold on. Okay, this plot is very detailed, so I'm going to try to keep this brief. After she and Hikaru defeat Super Grand King after the events of the previous episode, a large group of people start streaming in to visit the elementary school. Apparently, they do not wish for the school to be torn down due to its heritage. Previous Dark Dummy Spark users like the Rowdy Biker are also seen amongst the crowd, having redeemed themselves. But then suddenly Seiichiro collapses to the ground, followed by everybody else. To Hikaru and Hotsuma's shock, they see Principal Kyoko Shirai holding the Dark Spark, which was only temporarily destroyed and had regenerated. As Kyoko starts to glow in a dark aura, screaming in agony, Holtzima tries his ritual again but fails and also collapses due to his exhaustion, resulting in the principal being forced to summon Dark Lugiel. Taro is horrified as he recognizes him as the one who turned all the Ultras and Kaiju into Spark Dolls during the Dark Spark War, and after identifying himself, Lugiel declares to the people that their time will stop under his power. Dark Lugiel starts destroying the school, and Hikaru transforms into Ginga before he can complete his rise, Lugiel intercepts him with a heavy kick, and stepping on Ginga, the master, quote unquote, of darkness, looks upon his old enemy in contempt as they both recall their last fight during this Dark Spark War. Taro, realizing Ginga's time limit will quickly shorten, Tomoya looks at the now damaged and unconscious G9 and passes out too. After a barrage of energy blasts, Ginga finally falls unconscious as his time runs out. Dark Lugiel destroys the school and begins to stop time for all time and space. Knowing that he is the only sentient Spark Doll and believing there is no way to return back to his former self, Taro, speaking to Father of Ultra and Mother of Ultra, they tell him that he must use the hopes of the people. Everybody else awakes and starts to sing the school song, and gradually more and more people are roused from their unconscious state. Kyoko starts resisting Lugiel's control, and the light emerges from her. As a result of this, somehow the powers of the Dark Spark are suppressed. Ginga light sparks then begin to materialize in the hands of everybody else. They combine their powers to break the curse on Ultraman Taro, allowing him to return to his full form. Knocking the dark spark out of Lugiel's hands, Taro proves to be more than a match for the dark entity, and he fires a beam at Taro to turn him back into a spark doll, but Taro counters with his own beam. Realizing that Ultraman Ginga and Hikaru is the key to ending Lugiel's tyranny, Taro decides to revive Ginga by sending some of his own solar energy to replenish Ginga's color timer at the cost of being hit by Lugiel's attacks. He successfully revives Ginga, but is turned back into a Spark Doll as a result. Ginga returns to his full size and takes the fight to Lugiel to the moon. Transforming their sparks into trident-like lances, the forces of light and dark battle fiercely with each other, rather briefly, before Ginga overpowers Dark Lugiel with the Ginga Especially attack. With Dark Lugiel gone, for now, all the Spark Dolls return to their original forms and float towards the sky in the form of balls of light. Taro, then Ginga himself, thank Hikaru and friends before returning to where they came from. G9 also sends a message, "Goodbye, friend," to Tomoya through the gun pad before departing as well. The four friends gaze at the skies and thank Ginga for everything he had done, which wasn't very much, and they dance as the credits roll with a somewhat reluctant Tomoya. God damn. See, this is why I don't do TV shows very often. Going through the plot of the show is kind of a chore. So, how about this plot and the story overall? Well, unfortunately, I kind of can't really get into that without immediately just jumping right into my pros and cons, or my cons and pros in this case. So, yeah, like I said, we're going to be starting with the cons for this review because I admittedly do have more negative things to say about this show than positive. And con number one is the very uninteresting and underwhelming story. So, I know this is a really hard thing to do, and it's really not fair against this show, but I really just cannot help this. So, coming off of the Ultraman Zero trilogy, which is some of the most action packed, bombastic, and entertaining content in the entire Ultraman franchise, going from that, the heights of Ultraman Saga and Ultra Zero Fight Season 2, and then going to this, it feels like such a huge downgrade and drop in quality. You go from highly entertaining, highly action packed, and fast paced material down to slow, cheap, boring, melodramatic filler for the franchise. It's very jarring, very frustrating, and very tragic that we go from such high highs, then we drastically drop down to some of the lowest lows of the entire Ultraman franchise. And yeah, the story itself, there's really just not much you can say about it. It's extremely episodic, which normally I would like. I do prefer that if there's a show that I like and it has a very episodic story structure, I prefer that over an overarching story. Now you can do both, where you have like a season of a TV show that has an overarching narrative throughout the 20 episode season, but for the most part, from like episode 2 up until episode 18, the show focuses on more episodic case of the week type stuff. Like police procedural shows do that all the time. Like Bones, for example, or any season of Law and Order. But with this show, because the story is so lackluster and the scope and scale of the show is so small and it's so isolated from the rest of the franchise, the story itself just feels very uninteresting. Um, it feels very lethargic. It feels very lackluster. It feels just like filler for the franchise with very small snippets of an overarching larger story dropped here and there. The second half of the show, the story does start to progress and pick up more. And in the last couple episodes of the series, the show's stakes do heighten somewhat, but a lot of the elements are held back by arguably this show's biggest problem. But I'm going to try to save that for later. But for future reference, a lot of this show's issues stem from this show's biggest problem. You can probably, fans of Ultraman probably can guess what that problem is, but just bear with me. But look, trying to look at the series by itself, because it is isolated, it is a small scale series, and it kind of is a bit of a fresh start. Looking at it that way too, it's extremely bare bones and extremely underwhelming and yeah, lethargic. For this being the first installment of the new generation era, it begins not with a bang, but it begins with a whimper, in my opinion. Um, so yeah, that's all I have to say. The story for this show, it's very ho hum. It's kind of a sleepy series, in my opinion. Which, funny enough, I did almost fall asleep a couple times rewatching this show for the first time since 2022. So yeah, I don't really much care for the story. It doesn't do very much for me. It's very basic and bare bones and underwhelming. And this unfortunately is not helped by con number 2 for this show, is the bland cast. Now, this show does not have a very large cast of characters due to a major issue with the show. Um, let's see, who do we have here? We have Hikaru Raido, played by Takuya Negishi, Misuzu Isurugi, played by Mio Miyatake, Kenta Watarai, excuse me, played by Mizuki Ono, Chigusa Kuno, played by Kirara. I think she might have been an actual pop star or an up and coming one. Tomoya Ichijoji, played by Kusakawa, and that's the main cast: Hikaru, Misuzu, Kenta, Chigusa, and Tomoya. And with the exception of one partially, um, the rest of the cast for this series is very basic and very bare bones. None of the acting is really bad, although there are some points where the acting is a bit over the top and a bit cartoony and ridiculous. But yeah, none of the acting is really bad. None of the writing is really bad, but just the characters overall are very basic, very plain, and very simple. Far from one of the best casts for any Ultraman show. What also hurts this series is that there's no attack team, which I am pretty sure this is the first time in the entire Ultraman franchise where there's not a monster attack team for the show. Um, Misuzu, Hikaru's girlfriend, as I'll call it, they obviously want to be boyfriend and girlfriend. I'll save talking about Hikaru for later, but Misuzu is a very standard, very basic, like primary female character in a tokusatsu series. She's kind of cute. She is very innocent and pure. She's very kind. She's very humble. She's just a very pleasant person, which is fine and all, but at the same time, her character is just very simple. She wants to make she wants to make baked goods for everybody in the world just to put a smile on their face. This is a very common trope for a lot of tokusatsu shows, Ultraman in particular, because Ultraman is known for being a very positive and hopeful franchise. Um, but yeah, she's just kind of okay. Kenta Watarai is the typical like third wheel type character. He's usually the butt of everybody's jokes. A lot of the show's humor kind of centers around him because he's kind of a dumb, bumbling butt fuck. Um, Again, he's not unlikable by any means. He has some funny moments, and he has good chemistry with the rest of the characters. But again, yeah, just very basic and very simple. Um, Chigusa is also kind of a typical third wheel. She's another typical tokusatsu girl type character. She's the best friend of the main female character, and she's also very basic and very plain. She's also just kind of there just for the sake of such. Although she is a bit distinctive because she has an extremely like high pitched squeaky voice. It kind of sounds like she's talking on helium for the entire show, which is kind of funny to hear her talk sometimes. Then finally we have Tomoya. He's like almost the anti-hero type character. He's the one who's looking out for himself, the kind of selfish and spoiled rotten loner type character who just wants everybody to respect him and spouts off how great he is and how skilled and knowledgeable he is. And he enters in kind of a rivalry with the main character of the show. Very typical, very standard, very basic. And then by the end of the series, he has to learn some humility and learn to be humble somewhat, which he does, which is a nice trait that's carried into the next show, Ginga S. Um, but yeah, he's very typical. He almost feels like a standard secondary rider character from the Kamen Rider franchise. They tend to start off as anti heroes opposing the main hero of the series, but then by the end of it, they learn to become friends with the main character and become a hero. That's Tomoya. It's a diet version of that, but Tomoya is that in a nutshell. But so the characters, again, they're not bad, but the cast overall is just very basic and plain. They don't rewrite history. They don't reinvent the wheel. They're all just very standard, very basic, very plain, simple, almost boring. Um, Not bad by any means, but just not very great either. Con number 3. This is another issue with the story. It's actually a big one that came to me on my recent rewatch. There's a lot of unanswered questions. Namely, it's with the prologue of the show. Like, what is this Dark Spark War? The show talks about it a fair bit, but then it's never brought up again for the rest of the Ultraman franchise going forward. But they rehash the same topic. Long ago, there was the Dark Spark War. Everybody was turned into spark dolls during the Dark Spark War. The Dark Spark War, like, nearly destroyed the entire universe. Like, they talk about the Dark Spark War, but they never explain, like, when did it happen, where did it happen, um, where did Dark Lugiel and Ultraman Ginga come from? Because promotional material says that Lugiel and Ginga are from the future. When from the future? Where from the future? How long has it been since the Dark Spark War took place? Um, how did Dark Lugiel reawaken? How did he collect all these Dark Spark dolls to be resurrected? Why all of a sudden now is Dark Lugiel and Ultraman Ginga being resurrected? Um, how has Ultraman Taro regained his sentience as a Spark doll? Why is it only Ultraman Taro being a Spark doll? So many questions. Like, you see my point. Now, granted, Tokusatsu kind of has a pretty infamous history of introducing a lot of ideas and not really explaining it or explaining them very well. And they're also pretty infamous for using supplemental material. Actually, I think, like, we talk shit about America using supplemental material to explain movie stories, but Japan's been doing it since for Tokusatsu, they've been doing it pretty much since day one. But with this show especially, there's a lot of ideas and a lot of details that are talked about during the course of the series, but they never explain them and they never elaborate on them, which is really a shame and is really annoying. Hold on. Because yeah, the show asks a lot of questions, but it kind of feels like either the show is going out of its way to not talk about or not answer these questions that the show is asking, or the show didn't have the budget to answer these questions. And with the state of the series, I'm more inclined to think it's the latter rather than the former, unfortunately. Okay, hold on. Sorry. Just making sure my stream isn't conking out on me. Oh, you can probably hear me. Anyway, um now one thing that this actually just came to me earlier today. One thing that, like, this is my own personal headcanon. One thing that could explain the events of Ultraman Ginga is Ginga could be seen as like a soft reboot for the Ultraman franchise. Sorry. That's So funny. I gotta show that to Meadow. Yeah, it could be seen as like a soft reboot. They're not necessarily restarting the series, but they're establishing something had occurred in the past. And I do feel like the show kind of implies. Well, I mean, they don't imply it, but well, they do and they don't. The show implies that Ginga takes place a few centuries after the events of like Ultraman Mebius and especially the Ultraman Zero trilogy, because they do specifically state that the Dark Spark War had happened a long time ago, and it does feel like Taro and the other Spark Dolls have been Spark Dolls for quite a long time. And with this theory in mind, that could explain some later events in the New Generation era, in particular, Ultraman Orb and somewhat Ultraman Geed. So, yeah, like Ginga, to me, it takes place a few hundred years after the events of the Ultraman Zero trilogy. But this is my best guess. Like, you could say I'm grasping at straws or I'm reaching, which I very well could be. I'm not saying my theory is flawless, but that's the only thing I got for answering some of the unanswered questions that this show poses. And if you were hoping for answers to those questions in the rest of the franchise, sorry to say you'll be sorely disappointed. And actually, the sequel series throws a couple more wrenches into that head canon. So, yeah, it's very loose. So just take that with a grain of salt. Con number 4 is I think the show has a lack of focus and it lacks a strong through line. This ties back to the show being very episodic. It's episodic in a bad way, where each episode isn't necessary. Like, not even every episode is a typical Ultraman story format where, there's a monster of the week, the attack team or the human characters have to investigate the monster and or fight the monster, and then Ultraman shows up to defeat it at the very end. That part is retained, Ultraman showing up at the very end. But instead of an action adventure show, they try to turn Ultraman into a teenage melodrama. And in my opinion, this does not work at all. The first half of the show, especially, really makes this show very melodramatic. Where episodes 2, 3, and 4, the like Miss, what's her name? Sorry, I want to get this right. Misuzu, Kenta, and Chigusa are given their own episodes, and they're like possessed by Dark Bluegill and Alien Valky to become a Dark Dummy Spark, and it all feels very random, forced, and contrived. Like Kenta especially feels really forced. He just so happens to walk in when all the characters are talking without him, and that pisses him off and makes him want to turn to the dark side and turn into um, the monster Ragon from the original Ultraman. And his desire to turn to the dark side feels very forced. And his fight with Ultraman Ginga at the very end is very, very underwhelming and lame. But when he's turned back to normal and he comes back to the good side, the characters don't like criticize him or call him out for his bad behavior. Like, wow, you turned to the dark side and tried to kill us simply because we didn't include you in one conversation. It literally is that stupid and it sounds that stupid. But no, they don't call him out on that. The next episode, it's back to the status quo of everybody being best friends and lovey-dovey. Rinse and repeat for the next couple episodes. At least with Tomoya, when he's introduced in episode 5, his like conflict somewhat makes sense because he's the typical anti-heroic character for the show. So that kind of makes sense and that kind of gets the show moving along. But another issue why this series feels so unfocused is that it does feel like a series of random events. Like Kenta all of a sudden deciding to turn into the dark side for just the snap of a finger. Then we have a couple of illegal dumpers just wanting to turn into a monster because they're being told to not dump garbage. Or then we have Ultraman Ginga entering a big giant boxing ring to fight a cloning illusion monster known as Galbaros from Ultraman Nexus. And all the while, Ultraman Taro, still in his Spark Doll form, like picks up it looks like a scene right out of an episode of Monster Island Buddies. The Taro figure is holding a microphone, and you got all these Spark Dolls in like a boxing arena type thing. It's just so goofy and so ridiculous, and the tone is so jarring. Um, Really, it's the first half of the series. The first 5 or 6 episodes is where the story feels extremely loose and very unfocused. As I said, the story kind of like it gains more focus as the stakes gradually get a little higher in the second half of the series, which is better, but still, it really does not help the show feel like it has a proper escalation. It doesn't feel like we start from level 1 in episode 1 and end on level 10 in episode 12. It just feels very just random and all over the place until the end of the series. And it's really annoying, really jarring, and because the show is so inconsistent and unfocused, it leaves you sitting there and just feeling flat and almost completely disinterested. And what does not help this lack of focus and lack of a through line in the slightest is con number 5 and 6 have to do with each other. Con number 5 is the lack of action and the rushed fight scenes. Sorry, there's a fly here. Now, Ultraman is also pretty infamous. Well, Tokusatsu in general has this general formula where if there's like a Kamen Rider show or an Ultraman show, the monster of the week usually fights the title hero at the end of the episode, like the last 5 to 7 minutes or so, which is fine. But for this show in particular, now again, it's all stemming from the biggest issue that this show has, but I'm trying to build up to that. Um, the fight scenes here range from decent at their highest to anticlimactic and lame as all living shit at their worst. Episodes 2, 3, and 4, which I think are the weakest episodes of the show, hardly have any action in them whatsoever, at least as far as Ultra and Kaiju action. It's very lethargic and very lacklusterly shot. Like episode 3, I believe in particular, the one where Ultraman Ginga fights Pandan, the two-headed fire monster. All he does is unleash one of his attacks, and like he stands there and he's being shot at with fire by King Pandan, and then his color timer starts to blink, but then he gets stronger through the power of friendship, unleashes his attack, and destroys King Pandan. It's so lame and so lackluster and lethargic. Um, yeah, it's not. So I'm a big fan of Ultraman for the action. I love Ultra action. Giant aliens made of light going around destroying monsters left and right is what I look forward to the most. And this show has some of the weakest um ultra action of the entire franchise. Like it's almost Ultra 7X levels of bad. But what also really doesn't help is that what action scenes that we do have, many of them feel rushed and no, just rushed. Now, this does stem from the biggest issue of the show. Again, just bear with me. So, I'll actually talk about the rushed action a little later, but a lot of the show just doesn't have a lot of action. It's saved for like the last 3 to 4 minutes of the episode, discounting credits for 9 or maybe 10 episodes out of the 12 episode series. And it's just kind of frustrating and lame. Con number 7 is the show has very poorly used returning characters. Specifically, like Ultraman Tiga is used as a spark doll, and Hikaru and Kenta transform into Ultraman Tiga through the Dark Spark or the Ginga Sparks. Um, Only once for each character. Hikaru transforms into Tiga one time, and Kenta turns into Ultraman Tiga one time. Chigusa transforms into Ultraman, and what's his name? Misuzu's dad transforms into Ultra 7 one time at the very end, and they're all just kind of poorly used as supporting characters. They're mostly just either played for laughs, in Hikaru's case as Ultraman Tiga, or for all the three characters who turn into Ultraman, Ultra 7, and Ultraman Tiga, they're just there to simply hold a giant monster in place and spout and regurgitate various inspirational and um, quotes that give hope again and again and again until they eventually run out of power. It's very formulaic and very generic and forced and played out. Um, there's not any new monsters that are showcased in this series, which, by the way, that's not really a con or a pro, but it does kind of have to do with the biggest issue of the show. The series doesn't really have a a large and interesting variety of monsters. It just kind of feels like um, they just threw whatever random monster that had a decent looking suit just for the sake of such. Sorry, I'm trying to look for a monster list here. Or actually, no, wait. I'll save talking about that for a little later. But let me see if I can find this real quick. Ah, damn it! This is not working. Okay, here we go. I found the show. Let's see. What returning characters do we have here? You got Ultraman Tiga, Ultraman, Ultra 7. We got Alien Valky, Black King, Thunder Durambia, which is technically kind of an original monster, but it's only a slightly modified monster from Ultraman Dyna, so I don't really count that. All they did was plant two electrical coils on Durambia's back, like whoop-de-doo. Oh, we got Keemer, King Pandan, Ragon, Doragori, Alien Knuckle, Dark Galbaros, Zaragus, Red King, Antlar, Jasuline, Super Grand King, Dark Lugiel, Alien Magma, and no, Zetan's not here. Or not, no, not Alien Magma, but also Dark Zagi at one point. Now, Dark Zagi was the final villain of the series Ultraman Nexus, and he comes back at the end of, I believe, episode 5. And that goes into another one of the unanswered questions, like who resurrects Dark Zagi, and how the hell is Dark Zagi still alive? Because at the very end of the Ultraman Nexus series, Dark Zagi is killed by his counterpart, Ultraman Noah. Now, you could say that this is a different version of Dark Zagi, but that goes back into the unanswered questions. Is this a different version of Dark Zagi? If so, where did it come from? But if this is the original Dark Zagi, how the hell was he resurrected? Neither question is answered, which is really frustrating. Um, and this will also go into back into my rushed fight scenes. Uh, Dark Zagi and Ultraman Ginga have kind of a lame battle. It's just mostly they cover themselves in like a super speed aura, and they start like bashing into each other and zipping and teleporting around all over the planet. And they just shoot beams at each other in various places all throughout the world. And then they admittedly do have kind of a cool beam clash where they're firing both of their beams and they're like right in front of each other, like touching just like this, and their beams are trying to overpower each other. And then there's a big explosion, and Ginga and Dark Zagi are standing away from each other, but then Dark Zagi's color timer cracks and he explodes. First of all, I call bullshit because I do not believe that Ultraman Ginga is powerful enough to defeat Dark Zagi, because Dark Zagi is an evil clone of Ultraman Noah, whom is stated to be the second most powerful Ultra in the entire Ultraman franchise. So no shade being thrown towards Ultraman Ginga, but I just don't buy him being strong enough to take down Dark Zagi. Although, when I talk about Ultraman Ginga S, I now do have a new headcanon theory that could explain how he was strong enough to defeat Dark Zagi. And quickly, I just will say, I actually do kind of lean more towards this not being the original Dark Zagi, and this just being like a Spark Doll clone of a clone, if that makes any sense. But still, the fight itself is not really all that entertaining. Um, Dark Zagi arrives out of nowhere, gets into a somewhat entertaining fight with G9, which results in Dark Zagi damn near ripping his head off. But the fight begins cool. G9 transforms Transformer style, and then Dark Zagi does like this head tick. He runs forward and he smashes an energized punch into G9 and just sends it flying backwards. But then Dark Zagi nearly tears apart G9. But once Ultraman Ginga transforms, yeah, they coat themselves into their super speed auras, and then they engage in their fight, quote unquote, which is just an exchange of teleporting and beam spamming. It's just kind of boring and lame. I like the pretty colors, and I do like various beam attacks, but when you have two giant humanoid characters fighting against each other, I want to see some hand-to-hand combat, and this fight just doesn't give it to me. But yeah, the new returning characters are poorly used. They're either used for laughs, they're either used as fodder or jobber type roles, or they're just here for the sake of such. It's just kind of lame and frustrating. Con number 8, I believe. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, con number 8 Dark Lugiel himself is, in my opinion, a terrible villain. And this show overall lacks a strong villain. That's another mark against it, with it having a very bland and uninteresting story. Dark Lugiel himself, in his fully transformed state, not counting flashbacks, but even then, his appearance in the flashbacks is extremely brief. He only appears in his full form in the last episode of the entire series. Um, he looks cool. His suit is well made, and again, he looks evil and imposing and threatening, but he's not very imposing or threatening. A, because of his lack of screen time. B, because of his lack of influence throughout the series. And C, because his evil schemes, one, they're extremely basic and bland, but also two, they're very small scale and small stakes. Like, he spends a majority of this series just terrorizing a small town, and specifically terrorizing the 6 or 7 occupants of an abandoned school. And then in the final episode, after spending like 3 months terrorizing this school, now all of a sudden I'm gonna destroy and erase the entire universe. Like, what? Nah, nah, dude. Sorry, I cannot take you seriously. You jump from level 1 to level 2,000 in the snap of a finger. Nah, can't do that. Sorry, it's very unearned. And also Dark Lugiel's personality is extremely basic. Now, something that I do agree with, something Zagorudan said in his review of Ultraman Ginga. Dark Lugiel feels extremely derivative of Ultraman Belial, the primary villain of Mega Monster Battle Ultra Galaxy Legends, the movie, and Ultraman Zero, The Revenge of Belial. He kind of looks like him, mostly black body with red accents and lights all throughout his body. He has a deep, gravelly, evil sounding voice. He has large red eyes. He has clawed hands and a dark, spiky, evil looking body. And he uses red and dark colored energy attacks. He's extremely derivative of Ultra, and also he has a gadget that he uses to control monsters and control other characters. He's extremely derivative of Ultraman Belial, to the point of almost feeling like a clone of Ultraman Belial. And he's also just not as entertaining as Ultraman Belial. So you're trying to give me a diet version of a character that had already been perfected not even 10 years prior. Nah, sorry, sir. Can't do that. Not even 5 years prior, because Ultraman Belial debuted in 2009 and this show came out in 2013. So you're already trying to rip off previous characters that you'd already established? Nah, no, sir. So Dark Lugiel is definitely one of my least favorite antagonists of the entire Ultraman franchises. His appearances later on in the series are somewhat entertaining, but they just kind of rehash the same shtick that he was doing throughout this show. So it's kind of annoying there too. Now, the last two cons do have to do with each other, but like I said, a majority of this show's issues all have to do with this show's biggest issue. So, con number 9, very limited sets, but con number 10, this show looks cheap. Cheap as all living shit. The editing, the camera work, for the most part, the picture quality, and the special effects all scream cheap. Now, Ultraman is a TV franchise, yes, and there are a lot of Ultraman shows that do look like TV shows, but they still do have a decent amount of production value to them. But this series, this came out in 2013. At this point, CGI and green screens and high quality monster costumes and high quality like tokusatsu camera work had been all but perfected by this point. But because so a little bit of backstory, I meant to do this a little earlier. So after the release of Ultraman Mebius, Subaraya Productions was in pretty dire straits, and they're in pretty poor financial a pretty poor financial state at this point. Ultraman is a big successful franchise, but also costs a lot of money to make, and according to Zagoruden, many of the Heisei shows throughout the late 90s and early 2000s bled a lot of money. But after the release of Ultraman Mebius, the Subaraya Productions tried to keep the series going with the Ultraman Zero films. But then after those movies, like, they made money, but it just wasn't enough for them to recuperate. At some point, I believe in 2011 or maybe 2012, Subaraya Productions had to sell a huge chunk of the company to the studio Bandai. Now, everybody who's a toy fan knows who Bandai is. They're primarily a they're a toy production company. They're like Japanese Toys R Us. They're the ones who put out various Ultraman transformation devices and Ultraman monster and figure toys. Monster and Ultraman character toys. It's all very, very toyetic, like in the words of Joel Schumacher. Hold on a second, guys. My battery's about to die. Ugh. Okay. Oh. Oh shit. Well, hopefully it goes up. um. Anyway, so yeah, that happened. Bandai bought out Subaraya Productions, and that was part of the reason why there was such a long gap between Ultraman Mebius and Ultraman Ginga, because Subaraya Productions needed to completely restructure itself and figure out what to do next with the franchise. And Bandai gave them a very limited amount of resources in order to make the show, to restart the franchise, and it shows. So the most of the entire series, like 95% of the show, is limited to a real school that they shot at, which I'm pretty sure was a real abandoned school, and they just keep recycling the same couple of sets from that school, like a couple classrooms, the gym, and the cafeteria and kitchen a few times, and the surrounding playgrounds of the school as well, and the surrounding forest. And for all the monster and ultra action, they reuse the same, like, generic foresty empty field set again and again and again, redressed to make it look slightly different in each shot. Damn, this is giving me Jurassic Park 3 flashbacks. Um, and it gets very tiring very bland and very boring to look at. And this isn't a super long series; it's only 12 episodes, and each episode is 25 minutes. So that's about just under 6 hours. But still, spending nearly 6 hours looking at the same school and forest sets again and again and again and again and again, it gets so tiring, so boring, and so plain to look at. So, yeah, the show has very limited sets, but that's because the show was cheap. It looks cheap. The camera work is like it almost is sci-fi levels. Now there are some shots that are done for the monster and ultra action that are somewhat well done. Like you can tell even if the crew had limited resources, um they were still experienced in the world of tokusatsu. So like there is some low angles to make the monsters and ultras look big. There is some slow mo for the explosions to make them look more epic. Um, there is some like clever camera work to hide certain characters, like the second appearance of Ultraman Tiga Dark. He's hidden behind one of the characters, and the camera pans over and reveals, it's Tiga Dark. That's kind of a cool shot. But yeah, for the most part, the camera work and cinematography, it just looks cheap and makes it look like a sci-fi channel show. Why do I keep mentioning Tremors the series? The fight scenes too are shot at a normal frame rate, which doesn't make them look or feel like giant monsters fighting giant aliens. It just looks like two guys in suits beating the hell out of each other on a cheap set, and it doesn't really maintain or help the illusion of these being giant characters. Um, and also the picture quality is so brightly lit and so plainly lit. It doesn't even look like they're outside. It just looks like it's being lit by a bunch of studio lights. It doesn't maintain the illusion of these being giant characters whatsoever, in my opinion. Um, but yeah, the picture quality is so clean and crisp that actually, again, just hurts the illusion of these being giant monster battles. Um, and the sets themselves, they do look cheap. Nothing is really destroyed except for the school in the final episode. And that again, that's not bad, but it just looks like a cheap set being destroyed by a guy in a suit. Um, what else? Oh, so going to the rushed fights, it just looks like they did not have the time or budget to shoot really entertaining and engaging fight scenes. It just feels like for so many of them, they literally just said, okay, just stand there and get shot at, and then fire back, and boom, end of the monster. Like, it's lame. And so many of the fights are so over and done with so quickly. Like there's a couple episodes where Ginga transforms and his color timer starts to flash after not even a minute, and he poofs away after not even 2 minutes. It's lame and rushed. Especially since the show is called Ultraman Ginga. Ginga himself is not really showcased all that much throughout the series. That's not really a con, although it is definitely a criticism. But I'll talk about that when I get to talking about Ultraman Ginga himself. Um, there are also some crappy special effects too. There are some bad green screen effects. There is some cartoony CGI. Um, there's some bad composite shots, and that's about it. Mainly it's a lot of the digital effects that don't look very good. And they stick out like a sore thumb because the sets around them look so fake, and then you try to intermingle that with these very unconvincing digital effects, it almost at times makes the show look kind of unfinished, which is a shame because we've seen Ultraman have top tier tokusatsu effects many times in the past. Coming off of Ultraman Mebius, even like if we look past the Ultraman Zero trilogy, Ultraman Mebius has some of the highest production value of the entire Ultraman series, especially at that time. And then going from that and then going down to this, it just feels like such a huge drop in quality, and it's such a shame. So I can tell that the filmmakers were trying to do the best with what they had, but unfortunately, in the end, the best they could do was still just not that great because the show is so cheap. But it's not all doom and gloom for this show. So that's all my cons. I had 10 for this show. Holy shit. Let's jump into some pros. I have I have 6 pros. Pro number 1 is Hikaru, the main character, the guy who becomes Ultraman Ginga. Hikaru is also very basic and standard and typical. He's a very typical Ultraman protagonist. He's adventurous, he's ambitious, he's good-spirited, he's friendly, he's polite, he's kind, he's respectful. He wants to befriend everybody and help anybody and everybody that he comes across, no matter or like any way that he can. He's pretty much like Musashi from Ultraman Cosmos mixed in a little bit of Kotaro from Ultraman Taro. Funny because Taro is a character in the show. And a little bit of Daichi from Ultraman X. Um, so yeah, he's not a bad actor. What's his name again? Takuya Nagishi does a good job playing him, and he's got some good dialogue, and he has good chemistry with the rest of the cast. And you buy him as being the host of Ultraman Ginga, but he does still suffer from being very basic and bland. Now, this is not necessarily a problem with this show, but thankfully, Ginga S does a much better job of showcasing Hikaru as an interesting character. But we'll save that whenever I get around to talking about Ultraman Ginga S. So not much to say about Hikaru. He is a likable character and he is an enjoyable one to watch, but still he is very, very simple. Pro number 2 is Ultraman Taro. Now, Ultraman Taro has been, he debuted back in his series, of course, in 1973. But Taro has been a pretty common recurring character throughout the Ultraman franchise, especially with with Ultraman Mebius, but especially with Ultraman Ginga, he has popped up quite a few times since then. Now he spends 95% of this show in his Spark Doll form, but he is still an entertaining and engaging character. Yeah, I almost kind of wish he himself was the main character, but obviously you can't have an Ultra transform into another Ultra, but whatever. He's a great supporting character. And I do like that Taro has been voiced by Ultraman Taro himself has been voiced by the same voice actor since 1984, him first debuting in the Ultraman compilation movie, Ultraman Story, which kind of in and of itself acts as a new prequel showcasing the early childhood of Ultraman Taro himself. But as an adult, Taro has been voiced by the same guy ever since. And of course, he is in this show. He too has great chemistry with the characters. He acts as a good mentor for Hikaru to become Ultraman. And he acts as a good, like, kind of, what's the word? he acts as the audience for a lot of this show. Like he himself is witnessing the like Ginga transforming, Ginga fighting various monsters, Lugiel being resurrected, and he does his best to help the characters any way that he can. Like he can teleport, he can use his ultra psychokinesis attack, which is just telekinesis. Um, he can give words of wisdom, and he can give exposition. He is entertaining throughout the show. He is kind of funny at times too, because this is kind of a goofy and lighthearted series, and there are some fun and funny situations that Taro gets himself into. And actually, there's one scene where this is really cartoony, where one of the characters is like trying to. Oh, this sounds kind of bad, actually, now that I think about it. But she comes out looking very attractive, and Taro is standing there trying. He's looking at her, but he's like trying to be respectful, and his face is turning red. You know that typical thing where characters blush when they see a pretty girl. They do that with Taro, and it is funny. And also, thankfully, when he's able to be ultra lived back into his Ultraman form, his fight with Dark Lugiel, although it is brief, is entertaining. Oh, and that's go. Hold on. So real quick, going back to my cons, Dark Lugiel is epitomized in how poor of a villain that he is. When Taro transforms, he starts fighting Dark Lugiel. He like blocks a couple punches, and then he just starts chain punching Lugiel in his chest and face. But then all Dark Lugiel can do is just start slapping at Taro's chest armor. And then Taro starts kicking the crap out of him, punches him in the face, and kicks him across a field. So it's so obvious that Taro himself probably could defeat Dark Lugiel very easily. So it kind of makes you wonder, like, how the hell was this dude able to transform every single Ultraman and every single Ultraman monster, some of them being some of the strongest monsters that the franchise had ever seen. And they were all, like, defeated by this guy? Nah, I don't take this dude seriously as a villain at all. I'm sorry to say. But yeah, when Taro transforms, well, the scene when he is able to transform, that is kind of a hopeful, moving, and motivating scene. And when he transforms, finally, they play a snippet of like he shouts "Taro!" and flips in the air and tackles Dark Lugiel to the ground. They play Ultraman Taro's theme. Taro! Ultraman number 6! Da 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 da. Da da dun 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 dun. Uru tornado chinchin ga iru. Uru tornado haha ga iru. So shinge taro ga kokoro mi miru. It's the best way that I can, or the best that I can sing Taro's theme. But yeah, that scene when he transforms, it's cool and it's entertaining, but the fight scene is over and done with so quickly, which is annoying because he spent the entire series up till this point trying to transform back into his ultra form. He finally does, and not even 2 minutes later, he's reverted back into a spark doll. But then 5 minutes later, he's reverted back to his Ultraman form. Like, come on, guys, pick your poison. But yeah, I like Taro. He is a fun supporting character. And with all this talk about Ginga himself, pro number 3 is Ultraman Ginga himself. This guy right here. And actually, let me see if I can do something real quick. Um, nope, that's not it. Is this it? Oh, here we go. I think this might be it. Did I do it? Oh, I think I did do it. Um, Sorry, this is all very new for me, so just bear with me. So this here is Ultraman Ginga himself. Um, Ginga himself is not necessarily one of my favorite Ultramen of the entire franchise, but as you can see here, I do really like his design. I do think it is really cool. Him hailing from the future, I don't really think is showcased all that well in his design, but I do like that he looks very sleek and um he looks very much like a speedster type Ultraman, which I do like those. I prefer the strength guys, but Ginga still looks cool. Sorry, I'm just making sure this is still going. Um, I also really do like a lot of his abilities too. So we're gonna go to Ultraman Wiki here. Okay, here we go. I want to talk about his profile. Um, his height is stated to be micro to infinity, which I think is a little ridiculous. But actually, no. I'll just go back to this. Um, yeah, here we go. I just wanted to show you guys Ginga himself. But going to Ultraman Wiki, yeah, he's stated to be his height is stated to be from micro to infinity, but I think he averages at around 40 meters in height. Um, and I really dig a lot of his ooh, what the hell is this? I dig a lot of his attacks. The crystals on his arms, shoulders, chest, head, and legs, they always glow a bluish color, but um Ginga has a bunch of elemental themed attacks, and they all glow a certain color whenever he uses them. Uh, his primary Ultra Beam technique is the Ginga Cross Shoot, which he fires from the L style, although with his fist down here at his elbow. I prefer ultras who fire their beams in the L style, but it's a like green, white, and blue energy beam that's fired whenever his crystals shine a bright blue. Uh, then he has the Ginga Thunderbolt, which he it's an electrical beam that's fired from one of his hands, and obviously his crystals shine yellow whenever he uses that. There's the Ginga Fireball, the Ginga Saber, Ginga Comfort, which is just a like a beam that pacifies monsters that's fired from one of his hands. Very reminiscent of Ultraman Cosmos. The Ginga Slash, the Ginga Sunshine, and his strongest attack is the Ginga Especially. Um, and again, all his crystals glow different colors. They glow red with the Ginga Fireball. They glow white, although it's really hard to tell, with the Ginga Saber. Uh, Green for the Ginga Comfort. Purple for the Ginga Slash. Pink like a bright pink color for the Ginga Sunshine. And for the Ginga especially, again, that's a strange name, but all of his crystals shine like a rainbow color for that attack, which looks really cool. Regarding the special effects, I will say the best digital effects are obviously all the beam effects and the transformation scenes, but that's kind of to be expected for the Ultraman series at this point. But still, they all look really good. But Ginga has some physical attacks too, namely like the Ginga Hyper Throw, where he throws his opponents through the air. The Ginga Hyper Kick, a fast and speedy flying sidekick. The Ginga Hyper Punch, which is like a straight punch with his fist coated in energy. Um, so yeah, I would not say that Ginga is one of the strongest Ultraman that ever lived. But I definitely would say he's a good Ultra to join the ranks of Ultras like Ultraman Taro, Ultraman Max, and Ultraman Dyna. They're not the strongest, but they are skilled and strong enough to hold their own against a majority of uh, opponents they come across. So he is a cool Ultra. He's just not one of my favorites. And by the way, I should say a little bit of trivia. Ginga, the word Ginga itself, is Japanese for galaxy, which makes sense because a lot of Ginga's attacks are kind of like swirling galaxy shaped. Like his force field is the shape of a galaxy. And when he transforms, he spins like a galaxy, at least in Ginga him itself. In Ginga S, he just has a typical rise sequence. But he spins around whenever he lands after transforming like a galaxy. Um, so yeah, Ginga is cool. Pro number 4 is that there are some pretty colors. One thing that I really do like about Ultraman is that it is a very colorful series. Um, a lot of the beam effect, like Ginga himself, is very colorful. Again, all of his attacks are very, very colorful. Like he fires a purple beam from his head. The Ginga Sunshine, he fires an orange energy beam from his fists. Um, Whenever he uses his Ginga Spark as its trident, it's like a glow or a glowing blue lightsaber trident, which it looks really cool. It's a very vibrant shade of blue. All the beam attacks are various colors, also from like Ultraman and Ultra 7 and 7 Dark and Ultraman Dark. Very vibrant and pretty colors to look at, which I like. Um, Pro number 4 is that there are some fun fight scenes. It's not all doom and gloom when it comes to the action. The first episode with Ginga versus Thunder Dorambia is entertaining. It does a good job of showcasing a small taste of Ginga's power, but he's obviously a speedster type Ultra. He's very fast and swift and quick. And his attacks, they don't have a lot of strength behind them, but because he's so fast and so agile, they still do pack a punch, which is cool. Um, and he's definitely an ultra that likes to use both a mix of striking techniques as well as grappling techniques, like namely just throwing characters over his shoulder or using like judo leg throws, which is really cool. Um, yeah, Ginga's fight with Thunder Durambia is pretty cool. Um, Ginga's fight with Zaragus is pretty entertaining. His fight with not Super. His fight with Dark Lugiel is kind of lame, but I definitely think the his best fights are with Ultra 7 Dark and especially Ultraman Dark. Like when he takes on 7 Dark finally, when Ginga's all pissed off that 7 Dark is so brutal, he just starts throwing Seven all over the place and just beating the living shit out of him left and right. Like he especially like right before he finishes him off with the Ginga cross shoot, Ginga sends Ultra 7 Dark flying with a full-on punch to the mouth. Yay, she car.
Help me right now. Please.
Why?
Roman shit, and I didn't realize he shit until I was putting him in the car, and he had shit on his body.
Oh, the woes of being a parent, my dear viewers.
I'm on the phone too, so that's fine.
Okay, hang on, guys. I'll be right back.
You're still making a video?
Yeah, I'm just about done.
Holy shit. Everyone just heard me gag.
Yep.
That's so fun.
Actually, hold on. Oh dear, Mr. Sir. Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm totally. Just outside. And I said it smells like it's orange, and I can eat it. I'm right. Please refrain from eating anything. There's a towel. Oh my god, the color. Please don't take that shit once out of me. It actually just went away. Ugh. Just goes away. Oh god. Not keeping the shit. Ew, that makes my eyes water. That's so gross. Yeah, no, I sat Roman down in his oh god, ew. Please don't put that on the bed. Okay. I sat Roman down in his car seat and I was like, ew, what the fuck? I was like, yo, it smells like sausage, bacon, cheese, fucking McDonald's breakfast.
You probably can hear that on the camera.
That's nice. That's a bad one. That's a real bad one.
Yep.
I guess it's like breakfast. So gross. Ew. Usually it doesn't bother me that much, but that one,
I'm doing laundry tonight.
that one's bad. Okay, I'm gonna change my headphones. My earbuds. Ew. So nasty. Don't let him touch his ass on my bed, babe.
He's already clean.
I know, but it's like shit.
It's
You
all
can't. I know, but you can't wipe with that smell. No matter how much like you use it, that's so much. I feel like babies should have a shower every day if they shit their pants. Because think about it, if you shit yourself, if you just wipe it off with wipes, you still smell like shit. No matter what. So gross. Ugh. So bad. Oh my god. What?
Is he still on Finding Dory?
Hold on. What?
Is he still on watching Finding Dory?
Yeah.
All right. Hold on a minute. No, Roman. No, Roman. Nuh-uh. No. N-O. Not around the camera. Hold on, viewers. I'm almost done. All right. There you go. Stick and span. Take that out later. And I haven't had an interruption like this since my ranking the Alien, Predator, Terminator, and Tremors video. Okay. That was funny. Didn't smell funny though.
I usually get sick without spot.
Anyway, to answer this person, I'm from America. I'm from Washington. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, the fight scenes. Was it? No, the special effects. Damn it. What? No, it was the fight scenes. Okay. Sadly, there's really not that many decent fight scenes. But yeah, Ginga versus Thunder Durambia, Ginga versus Tiga Dark and Alien Valky, and Tiga or not Tiga, Ginga versus Seven Dark and Ultraman Dark. And as brief as it is and kind of rushed as it is, Ginga's final fight with Dark Lugiel is also pretty entertaining. It ends on the moon, and they're ripping and slashing and tearing at each other with their tridents. And then they finish the fight off by having um, a beam clash with their especially attacks. And it is cool. And the way Ginga defeats Dark Lugiel looks pretty badass. But that's about it. Every other fight scene in this show is either lame or rushed or too short. And the final pro that I can give this series, pro number 6, is there are some decent special effects. I mean, the set itself, it looks cheap, but it does also at least look well made in a very basic and simple way. But it's not terrible, I guess. I've seen worse. All the monster suits are in still pretty good condition. They're all reused, but they still look like they were in good shape. I don't see any tears in the monster costumes. I don't see any suits that look like they're falling apart. Um, Ginga suit looks really good. Dark Lugiel suit also looks really good. Um, yeah, that's about it. There's not a whole lot of special effects in this show. The beam effects also look pretty good from both. Oh, G9 also looks really good too. But yeah, the beam effects from Dark Zagi and G9 and Ultraman Ginga and Ultraman Ultra 7, Ultraman Tiga, both their normal versions and their dark versions. The beam effects all look fine, but we've never really had bad looking Ultraman beam effects, at least in my opinion. So, yeah, the effects are just decent. There are times where you can tell, like I've said previously, that the filmmakers were doing the best that they could with the resources that they were given, and the effort is evident. But for the most part, I do think that they just didn't have the resources necessary to make this a really worthwhile show. So that'll actually just bring me back to my original starting point. Final thoughts on Ultraman Ginga. This is not one of my favorite installments of the entire series. It is definitely a very weak show. It's a weak Ultraman season. It's a weak Tokusatsu season. It's a weak start to the new generation era. It's just not a very engaging, enjoyable, or entertaining series, unfortunately. But with that being said, funny enough, I don't think it's a very hard show to watch. It is a fairly quickly paced series. There are some chuckle worthy moments, and when the action does hit, it at least does hit pretty hard. And I blazed through my recent rewatch in just a couple days. Um, so it's not a horrible show to watch. I just don't really recommend it because there's far better tokusatsu shows that you can spend your time watching. Like the next season, I do think is a big step up over this series, but another video for another day. So, despite all of my issues with this show, I'm going to give Ultraman Ginga a 5 out of 10. It's not unwatchable, it's just not all that enjoyable. So, damn, that was a mouthful. See, I told you I had a lot to say about this show. Post your comments down below and let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Share this video with your friends. Look forward to next episode with the return of Super Kaiju Binge, with the return of an old friend, but one that you may not uh, think that it may be. So, as always, go out, watch some Ultraman, and I'll see you guys next time.